Yeah. Weka picha ya leo. Yeah. Okay, me I'm off sasa. I'm off. I am off. Yeah. Hello, Susan. Hello, Susan. How are you?
Good, good.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
how ni ski?
Na una drag net yako iko off. Nakusikia. Yeah. I'm looking
I
for
can hear you
Prof.
loud and clear. Okay.
Yeah.
Sawa, sawa.
Connect. Na unajua ile kitu naongea slow motion.
That is how I sound. That's how I
Yeah.
sound. Even I sound.
Yeah.
Slow-mo. I'm saying, am I sounding like I'm on slow motion?
Yes. Yeah.
Should I
Just
try
and see if I'm looking for Yemi. Miles, better. Have you tried something else?
In terms of, I was actually suggesting I leave it.
Yeah?
Sounding like?
Sorry?
Saying I'm sounding like?
Just try this. Try kill video and then we hear.
any better now? Martin.
Hello, Susan.
Higher. Better
Susan.
now? Still.
Still mbaya kabisa.
Na venye
Mbaya kabisa.
nimezima nimewasha tena. Can I try some different
Check, you can check settings zako. I have 61 people on waiting. I'm looking for Prof. I want to let them in like a minute. Okay, found.
Because I've even checked my speed. It's dragging.
It must be your speed. It must be your speed.
I'm saying I've just checked it. I've just checked
Hi, Prof. Prof, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Good morning.
Morning. You can start your video.
Okay.
Great, great. Okay, so Susan is having some issues with speed, so she's sounding like she's in slow motion. I have like 70 people in the waiting room. I want to let them in.
Oh,
Yes?
okay, no problem.
Yes. So I have a small present. Yeah.
I think Susan is live.
Yes, Susan
I'm
is.
here. I'm just.
You can hear the issue with speed.
What did you say?
I'm saying you can hear how Susan's speed is like.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let me do this. I want to open up and then we can get guys going. Then Susan, I don't know what we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
With Susan?
Let me try.
Yes, Susan.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Can you log out and log in?
Yeah,
Yes,
so
Susan,
I
you can try
tried
that.
that. It wasn't working. And then also I'll switch on and switch on my network connection again and see if it helps.
Okay.
Okay, Susan.
Lillian, can't talk, just jumping into the meeting session right now. You're there? Okay, now let me WhatsApp the login details. Okay. Yeah. I'm getting guys in now. Okay. Okay, Ajayi, I think what we do, we start off. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So then I'll look at Susan, and if it's her sound is very bad, then you and I will have to manage. Make sense?
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Then another thing is, if we want to get the audio from her, we can switch off the video, maybe to let her in.
I think it's speeds on our side.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Okay.
Okay, I will be live on video, right?
Yes, you'll be live on video, you'll be live on voice, everyone else is muted.
No problem.
Okay. Let me admit everyone. Just sending them a message that we are admitting everyone now. Okay, Susan hasn't been able to come back. I'll see her. Yeah. Let me just admit, guys, because we have 88 guys and going up. Okay. Yeah. So you have your presentation. I have Susan's presentation. That's a good thing.
Oh,
yeah?
Okay.
Okay. So I have an introduction, and then I get guys in. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Let me just get it. Let me just open mine. Okay, we're good to go?
Okay.
Okay. Oh. Hello, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session. My name is Martin Wanjohi, and I'll be your moderator today. With me is Ajayi and Susan, who will be with us in the presentation. So just to start off, I think I'd like to welcome everyone on board. I think right now we are at 111 people in this session. And all HR professionals spread out between Kenya, Nigeria, and Southern Africa. It's a great pleasure to have all of you. I'm going to mute everyone. And I'll not allow participants to unmute themselves, except for the presenters. Just again, we're still having more people joining. We have about 109 participants so far, and rising. So I think we're good to go. Ajayi, a greeting to the team, to the participants, then I can do the introduction, and then we hit off the road. Ajayi, you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, everyone else can hear us? Good. So everyone can hear, that's what I'm seeing. We had a small problem with audio. So I think we're good to go. So Ajayi, let me give you the floor to introduce yourself briefly, and then I can do the session introduction.
Okay, thank you very much. You permit me to share my screen?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone listening to me across Africa, to my people in Kenya, Abari Yaku, and to my Nigerian family, good morning to everyone. I will be taking you through this session in a few minutes. My name is Adeyemi Ajayi. I'm a consultant in Nigeria, the CEO of Exitum Consulting. Last year, I'm one of the top 150 HR personnel globally, HR influencer, and top 8 HR thought leader in Africa for this year. So thank you very much. I believe I can roll on straight. Do I have your permission, Martins?
Let me do the introduction session, and then we can hit off. Yeah. Okay. If you can unshare your screen, Ajayi.
Yes, I have shared my screen.
No, if you can unshare, if you can stop sharing.
Oh, okay, okay.
So that I can share something also. Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm sharing my screen. Okay. Okay. So anyway, welcome everyone. My name is Martin Wanjohi from My Performance Africa. I seem to be having a challenge with sharing. Oh, everyone can see my screen. So this session basically is about learning and development. Okay, let me just, my screen is refusing to share. Okay, perfect, perfect. So just a brief introduction of who is High Performance Africa, what we are, who we are, and what we do. So High Performance Africa is a world-class learning and development organization. What that means is we just focus on learning and development. What we do is create learning solutions that provide professionals with the capability to develop talent in their organizations. Why we want to do that is so that we can have professionals who are helping their businesses meet the business objectives. Our vision is to create a world that is always learning. Anybody who's come across us has been seeing us running, always learning, always learning. Our mission is to be the catalyst that accelerates change in learning for development of talent in the workplace, to enable businesses meet the business objectives. Your session moderator is me, Martin Wanjohi, title Chief Learning Officer at High Performance, and I am an accidental trainer. as are many of us. And yes, the rumor you heard about me is true. I am in learning and development and not in HR. So then, one of my areas is, this is me, my certification, Master Instructional Design, ATD, and Balance Scorecard certified. This is one of the sessions. People from Kenya will notice one of the persons, Gabriel Nyamo that is Gabriel, and that is me right there in the back. Gabriel Nyamo was one of the trainers we went for a session with for Balance Scorecard. So just to jump right into the training. So how do you design, aka develop your training? So this is a question I asked someone in training, and they told me, we Google the content and make it interesting. So mostly we begin with the topic in mind as opposed to what outcome we want. And we need to always start with the end in mind rather than starting from a topic. What is the state of learning in Kenya and in the region? Most trainers in the region are accidental trainers. Ajayi, you'll share with us that. But what from our findings, many people find themselves in training and they loved it, and they have been doing it. They have been doing it ever since. This is what we call accidental trainers. What is the key for learning? The most important thing about learning is that it is enjoyable to the learner. It is designed using various instructional methods, and it engages the learner. The outcome of every learning should be to transfer the job to should be transferred of the skills to the job to enhance performance. As we go on, just to mention, if you have any question, you can put it on the chat and we'll also be able to answer them. We need to be designing the total learning solution that covers both formal and informal and social. So one of the things I noticed when I went for this instructional design training, one of the questions I asked myself is, what actually have we been doing and calling training? So it's still something we are learning, and I think it's a journey we all start. Times have changed. We need to start changing also to move with the times. So I know we only measure what participants think and feel about our trainings. That's what we call the reaction. And we ignore all the other 3 levels in the evaluation for learning. The learning and development in the new times, we need to analyze the learning need. We didn't need to design the learning solution for that particular need. We need to develop the learning solution and evaluate it. I know mostly we design and develop, and sometimes the 2 words are interchangeably to mean the same thing. So there is some learning for us to be able to move on to. Okay, just admitting a few people who will be joining us right now. So basically, that's where we are headed. We need to have a change in the way we're doing learning. And the 2 sessions of learning today and tomorrow will give us an insight into where we are headed and where how we can improve. So this is not about me, but it's about the people who we have lined up as panelists. Mine was just to set the tone. So we will start off with Ajayi. Ajayi, I think I'll stop sharing my screen, and then you can pick it up from here for the session that you have for us. Okay, Ajayi, over to you.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen again. Good morning, everyone. Please, if you can hear me, let's go to the chat room and say hello, so that I'll be sure everyone is with me on this. Okay? Okay, if I can get 5, 10 people saying they can hear me, that would be very fine by me. Okay, thank you very much. Very good response from that end. Once again, for those joining us, my name is Adeyemi Ajayi. I'm a consultant. Like I mentioned earlier, last year, one of the top 150 HR influencers globally and top 8 HR top leader in Africa this year. And I would say one of the 5 Africans in HR for 5th Industrial Revolution. But that's a very brief introduction about myself. I want to talk about challenges of L&D in this crisis period. We want to look at the solutions and the lessons we learned. I'll be very brief because of my time. This is a challenging time for every profession. It's a lot of back and forth for many organizations. But one thing that remains so resilient all through this period is the fact that learning has been so dynamic. So many things have changed. We're going to be looking at those things. I'm going to be picking them one after another, make a brief about them, then I'll be able to close my session. So let's look at the emerging challenges, the solutions, and the lessons we have to learn, okay? First is the fact that there is disruption in curriculum of learning now. So if you're in L&D, if you have a learning curriculum designed, you need to go back to the drawing board at this point. For the past, in Nigeria, I've been part of 3 national projects in terms of redesigning curriculum. And this is the time for us to look into that. Very important as L&D, whether as a facilitator or you are in L&D function, you need to go back and look at the curriculum, look at things that are quite relevant and things that are not probably relevant anymore. That's what we call a pruning down. Then there is change in methodology and approach or mode of deployment of learning. It has changed. That's the truth. I want to tell you again, I've been part of several projects of organizations converting their learning mode or the mode of deployment to the learning management system. A lot have been going online. A lot have been going on so many online courses. We have them all over the place because of the social distancing. But hey, that's the way it's going to be. That's the way it's going to continue largely, though we have a lot of times that, I mean, we have sometimes rather, where people have to go into the classroom to learn. But I want to tell you also that the mode of deployment of learning has changed. And that tells you that a lot of facilitators, we have lots to learn. I think I've shared this good news with you that Nigeria yesterday had its own chapter of International Association of Facilitators, and I'm the first acting president of that association. What that tells is we've done a lot of researches in the background that tells us that the mode of deploying L&D, learning and development, would drastically change. And this is happening during this pandemic session. Again, there'll be changes in L&D budgets. A lot of organizations are already reviewing their L&D budgets. That's the truth. With the deployment of solutions, that tells you that L&D practitioners will now have to learn about content and curriculum development, as well as adaptation of technology in the deployment of learning and development across various organizations. And I want to tell you again that there's a huge prioritization for the use of technology. And that, to a large extent, will help in some organizations to either increase their budget or their budget. Then we have changes in competencies that is required of the L&D function. You know, the L&D function, part of the core technical competencies is the ability to evaluate the impact of learning. And this time around, there will be more emphasis on that. So if you're going into L&D, your organization will start asking you to evaluate the impact of learning even before they invest in that learning. We have to put that at the back of our mind. Again, time on learning will be really checked relative to the competencies you're trying to build. So there will be more specificity, let me use that word, when it comes to aligning competencies to the L&D function. Then I want to tell you there will be changes. I mean, this emerging trend, there are a lot of emerging trends, but I mean, these are just few that we could bring up because of our time. There will be changes in the fees of facilitators. That's the truth. Two things will happen. It will either go up or come down. When I mean go up this time around, your ability to adapt to situation and provide a germane solution to learning and being strategic will make you better priced. But the truth is, a lot of organizations, when there are crises like we are facing, one of the lines they go into is the cut down training budget. And some of that. And like Martins earlier said, a lot of us facilitators, we're accidental facilitators. We have only few of us that are very deliberate about it. So there'll be change in facilitators. There are solutions that we need to look into. In terms of disruption of curriculum, I will tell you, if you're an L&D function, even as a facilitator, one of the things you should go out doing at this moment is to quickly look at the curriculum you've set out to deploy here, to start checking where things have changed and start looking at the competencies that are emerging. Let me tell you one of the competencies that will emerge after this pandemic. There will be competencies around emergency management, crisis management. There will be a lot of stakeholder relationship competencies, that will come up. So you need to go back and look at your curriculum, and you can achieve this through research and information gathering. Like I told you, I've been part of pockets of projects that requires, moving curriculums around and looking at the impact of this curriculum. So it's very important for us as L&D practitioners, as facilitators, to look at the value chains and look at the curriculum, content development, which is very, very important. Then I've come across a lot of colleagues in the industry that are not that tech savvy. It's very important that we put it at the back of our mind that going forward, one of the solutions we need to deploy is how to look out for tech impacts on the deployment of learning. What's the impact of technology? And that we address the issue of the changes in the mode of deployment. So when the mode of deployment changes, all you need to do is tweak the technology to suit this mode of changing. And in terms of budgets, I know organizations that are seriously cutting down the budget to, I'll call it a bloodline. I mean, the line that is unbearable. So if you're an L&D function, whether in an organization or as a facilitator, one of the things you can do is to look for a fair way of making the budget to be fair to all. And again, for you as L&D practitioner, speaking to you, you need to acquire a lot of competencies, tech-related competencies in the deployment of learning. In one of the introductions that Martins showed us earlier, we saw formal, informal, and social learning. Let me tell you the truth. Social learning will increase, will be on the rise, extreme rise. And so as an L&D practitioner, you need to position yourself for that. So you need a lot of competencies that you need to acquire in the space of technology, in the space of deeper content and research. Very, very important, because the workplace will become more dynamic than ever before. So it builds on you to build yourself in this space. And again, it's very good that you create a network of facilitators. We have people on this platform, we have people in our various locations that we can connect with. And this time around, the solution is don't operate alone. If you want to succeed in L&D forward, don't operate alone. You need to network, you need to look at the ecosystem of L&D and look at people who can help you to connect with them and add values to yourself on a consistent basis. The truth is, what you knew yesterday may not be relevant today anymore. But if you operate within this ecosystem effectively, engaging and looking at various stakeholders, I can assure you, you will consistently grow thereby. Now, let's look at to take away from what is happening now during this crisis period. we need to be very, very proactive. And it's very important we deploy things like L&D analytics. Very important. Let me tell you some of the key metrics that businesses will be looking out for in L&D function going forward. They want to look at average cost of training an individual. They want to look at average cost of training locally, average cost of training international, numbers of participants on tech platform to learn, okay, and hours of learning. All these things are considerable in taking decisions. So you have to be very, very proactive and also determine how many people do I need to train to build certain competencies to achieve organizational goals. Very, very important. And I want to also tell you that please, for all the practitioners in various organizations here, go back and look at your L&D policy. Very, very important, please. It's very important. The lesson we've learned from here is we need to restructure our policies. We need to restructure our frameworks, the procedures and the processes. Very important. And again, the adoption of technology is not negotiable. We have to adopt technology and put it into consistent and continuous use. Then upskilling makes the difference for you as L&D practitioner. I think I mentioned that when I was talking about engaging facilitators. It's a big lesson that you need to learn. You need to upskill. You need to continue to build up your skills and competencies from day to day, every time you have that opportunity. Like what High Performance Africa is doing is capacity building across Africa. And I'll commend them for that. But beyond that is, I'm challenging you as individual to look into upskilling, because the big lesson that I have learned personally to not be the way they used to be. The best way for me to survive and get on with my L&D passion is to become dynamic with acquisition of skill. And finally, the quality of delivery should be reviewed from time to time, which is very, very important. If you're in L&D function, you need to look into what we call the quality assurance of learning. What is the quality of the learning? You need to set standards, you need to set metrics, you need to make sure that these things are consistent with organizational strategy. And that is one of the ways you can achieve a lot, deploying learning across various organizations. I'll say one more thing before I stop, because I believe my time is quite up. The fact that things will change should also make you to change so many things on your own part. I mean, personally, this time around, I'm challenging every L&D practitioner to look across the professional line and the L&D and consistently add value to yourself. And beyond that is, I look forward to a day where we're going to have L&D Africa's conference, where we'll have the opportunity to meet, to network, and grow this practice in such a way that it will be dimensional to the overall growth of Africa, and also speaking to African Union Agenda of 2063. So thank you very much for listening. I would like to stop here. Thank you very much. Back to you, Martins.
Yeah, Ajay, thank you very much. Welcome. Maybe we could take a few questions before we go on, before we have Susan take over the next session, So there's some questions that came in for you.
Okay.
One is Julia from Standard Group. Thank you for this training. I have two questions. What online tools would you recommend for free courses? And two, how do you measure what people are doing, learning, especially now that people are working from home?
Yeah, I didn't get the second question.
How do you measure what people are doing and learning, especially now that people are working from home?
Okay.
Yes.
So can I go ahead to respond?
Oh, yes. Yes,
okay.
You can do that.
Now, what kind of tools do you deploy for free online courses? There's something we call MOOC, Massive Online Free Courses. And you can get some of them on Coursera, on EDX, on a lot of them out there that you can get. In fact, all you just need to do is very simple. Go on Google, just type free courses. I know of several institutions, universities that are doing free courses I've attended some of them in the past few days, and it's been very interesting. So just once you get on Google, it's even more than the regular ones we have. A lot of people are pushing free courses to the space, to learning space. And second is, how do you measure what people are doing and learning, especially during this time that they're working from home? It's very simple. If you said you've acquired certain skill, first is those present your certificate, well, fine. That may not, but the impact of what you have learned should reflect in the quality of your work, should reflect in the competence you have acquired, and is reflecting on your output. So that's one of the ways to measure it. If your output remains the same, if the quality is not improved, then you've not probably learned anything. Maybe you've just gone to warm the brain. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ajay. You could maybe unshare your screen and then we can pick it up from here.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So we still have some other questions. Susan, maybe you're on board?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Lovely. Yeah, lovely. We had a small technical issue, but I think now it's well resolved. And that's one of the things people are learning. Yeah, how to handle crises when you're live online.
Okay, that is very true. Can I go ahead and share my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So Ajay, thank you so much for a very informative session, and some of the things you've touched on are actually squarely falling in the future of corporate learning, which is what I'll be talking about. So a little bit about me. I have been in the L&D space for about 10 years. I started out as a high school teacher, interestingly enough, and as Martin said in his introduction, I wouldn't exactly say I'm an accidental trainer. I've always had a passion for creating aha moments, as I call them. Though I have worked in different departments within the bank, which has supported my career as a trainer, because as you go about the different departments, whether it's administration, whether it is in sales, whether it is in HR, you get a very good appreciation for what is actually happening in the business. I currently work as an L&D consultant, so I help organizations learn and design staff capability programs. And I call them staff capability because development is about more than just training. There's also the element of embedding the training into the organization. So I'm very excited about what we'll be talking about today, especially in view of all the changes that we have all experienced in the past few weeks. Now, what will I be talking about? I'll be looking a little bit into where we are now and what is coming next. I will then talk about the future of corporate learning. Now, March 2020 shall forever remain in our memories for the very simple reason that our lives changed. What happened in the month of March across the different countries all over the world was that we were hit by an unexpected pandemic. And now our offices don't look like this anymore. Instead, our offices have become this. That is, of course, where you're lucky that you have a designated space where you can actually work and where you can actually learn. So that's a very neat and organized look at the home office. Same time in March, we suddenly had all these seminars that were canceled. At the same time, we had in-person learning canceled, conferences and all kinds of events canceled in the span of a month. In most of Africa, at least that was the experience. And yet, interestingly enough, within this same period, the 2019 e-learning industry report showed that the global e-learning market was set to grow exponentially. So it was set to grow from $107 billion to $325 billion. And this was long before COVID ever hit. So you can imagine what that then means in terms of opportunities for e-learning post-COVID. McKinsey wrote an article in March where they highlighted that businesses can't afford to put capability building on hold, that they cannot simply push a button. And I know some of you as HR practitioners, as L&D professionals, you have experienced this. Your employees cannot stop learning, primarily because learning plays a very key role in the organization, in as much as Ajayi rightly pointed out that the first line that gets cut off right next to marketing is usually the learning budget. That's what gets cut off immediately. So we've seen different kinds of players in terms of how companies react. So we've had the reactionary companies, we've had the agile companies, and then we've had the progressive companies. So the reactionary companies are the people who got shocked and didn't know what to do. The agile companies are the ones that have quickly picked up and figured out we can actually convert our existing training into virtual training. And then we have the progressives who had long ago seen into the future and had begun to make strides towards preparing for a future where learning is prioritized. Now, depending on how companies view learning, depending on their philosophy of learning, they have responded in one of three ways. So they've either canceled all training until further notice, they have considered converting instructor-led training, ILT, into virtual training, or they simply switched to existing learning platforms which they already had in place. Now, here's the thing. Learning must go on, as McKinsey has rightly pointed out. And because learning must go on, we must examine why must we learn? Very key skills development. Again, Ajayi touched on this. He mentioned upskilling. So upskilling is giving our employees and our teams and our people the strengths that they need to be able to do their work. And it could be additional skills which they did not have. Reskilling comes in when I need to learn something new. Again, Ajayi mentioned this when he talked about technology. So people are having to learn coding simply because their role has changed, and because their role is changing, given the current situation with the advancements in technology, we need to reskill them. At the same time, learning and training helps us promote consistency and efficiency. A classic example is the hotel industry, or in hospitality in general. So you go to a restaurant, go in the morning, service looks one way. Go midday, service looks another way. Go in the evening and service looks another way. So one of the reasons why learning is important is because by promoting continuous learning, you're able to create some consistency and efficiencies across board so that you have a unified service and have a unified brand as an organization. Then we also talk about learning for improved individual employee performance. So everybody gets onto a job for a reason. There are some roles that they need to execute. In order to help them do their jobs better, we give them some learning. Then learning helps boost employee morale and satisfaction. There are people who are motivated by learning. So because my company has invested in me, I feel that they care about me. And therefore, when I go to my workplace, I will give my level best to the company. Then lastly, learning supports business transformation. Think about it. We've seen recently in Kenya, for example, ABSA went through a major transformation from Barclays Bank to become ABSA. So there was some learning involved, learning in terms of culture change. When you think about rolling out a new system, or when you think about companies converting from a manual system into an automated system, that business transformation is supported by learning. Question then remains, what then does the future hold for corporate learning? So if we are operating in a place where things are changing really fast, companies can either react, they can either be agile, or they can be progressive. So what then does that mean? So I put it to you that the future of corporate learning needs us to consider several things, and that's the future of work. So there have been many reports by the World Economic Forum. There have been reports which have been shared by McKinsey and by Ernst & Young and PwC. And some of the considerations in the future of work is technology and AI. So we cannot get away from technology. Technology is here to stay. And as we think about learning in the future, we must consider that technology and AI plays a key part. The other consideration we need to make is the changing role of the employee. So we are suddenly all working from home, we are remote employees. And like someone has asked, how then can you tell that someone is learning when they are not physically in the office? And I like AJ's response that we're looking at quality, output, and we're looking at the competence. So when you have a remote worker, how then do you support them to continue learning, because they too must learn? Then the future skills. So future skills here are skills that are in demand and are driven by technology, and they are driven by globalization. So you'll find key skills like coding is becoming very important, machine learning, data science. So even as we design our learning, we must think about the future skills that we are and upskilling our teams for. Then there's the war for talent. So the war for talent simply says that because we live in a global world, more global now every day because of technology, an employee need not necessarily be located physically in the country which is hiring. So what that then means is, as you're designing your learning, you're thinking about how you are training someone for a global business and a global world, rather than just thinking local. And then lastly is the issue of multi-generational workplaces. So if we think about it, the 10-year-olds of today in about 10 years are going to be our future employees. Their experiences are very different from those who lived through First World War, Second World War, who lived through the recent changes that have happened across the world. So each generation has a different approach and a different view to learning. And because of that, you will find that as you're designing your programs and as companies think about their programs, they have to think, how do we get our Generation X to adopt learning? How do we help the Generation Z adopt learning? So how do we differentiate learning for the different peoples and the different styles of learning? And at the same time, how do we help them learn together? Because there is some benefit that comes from the 3 different generations or 4 different generations working and learning together. So online and virtual learning is here to stay. Like I've said, we are being driven by technology. So because technology is driving everything and changing things really fast, and because we are thinking more and more about how, if we cannot meet in person, how can we still have people learning virtually? We must accept that online learning is here to stay. And our learning then needs to rely on 3 pillars. And those pillars are the strategic pillar. And when we talk about strategic pillar, here's where we're talking about learning that supports business and business transformations. So I recently had a conversation with a friend who is in manufacturing, and she said something very interesting to me. She mentioned that right now the question is, what business learning can we do now that will have the most impact for our teams? So it's not simply about taking your in-person training and converting it into a virtual program. It's thinking strategically. What does the company need today? What are we going to need tomorrow? How can we then take whatever programs we have now and make us future ready and make our teams future ready? Then also we need to take into account that it's no longer about ticking boxes. So historically, training has gotten a bad rap, for instance, because many people simply train to train, not necessarily because it is adding any value from a business perspective. At the same time, learning must be innovative. So we have had companies that have had to think through a different way to train their people, a different way to make sure their people are still learning, and a different way to actually train them. A few years ago, I worked with a client in the hospitality space, and one of the biggest challenges they had was teaching their kitchen staff to assemble burgers. And they realized that the play toys that children use, the ones they use to create food sets, could actually be a tool that they can use to train their kitchen staff to assemble burgers. So when they adopted an innovative approach to training about burgers, beyond just getting people to memorize and recite the ingredients, they saw a shift and they saw a renewed appreciation for the process and for getting things done and getting things done right the first time. And then lastly, learning must be learner-centered. More and more now, and the question that was asked earlier really points to this. How can I learn for myself? How can I learn for free from Harvard, for example? How can I learn for free from any university anywhere across the world? And how can I then be able to apply that learning for myself? So it's about what the employees need. It's about how the employees can be helped to be able to keep learning no matter where they are. So what then does this mean for companies? So at the very start, companies in the future, as we are moving along, need to consider investing in technology, because technology is here to stay. Technology supports and enables learning, and more than anything else, technology is the difference between whether your team is upskilled or not upskilled. In the initial days of home working, there were very many jokes going around because there were employees who are suddenly having to use Zoom. They've never Zoomed before, and now they have to learn how to use Zoom, and it is part frustration, part excitement. And if those technologies had been available to them, it would then have been a different case. They might have learned faster, they might have adopted faster, and it might have been a more smooth transition from in-office working to home working. And then strategic conversion of in-person learning. So let's not convert our in-person training just for the sake of converting it. Let's think about what training is going to have the largest impact to which team. And as Martin also, both Martin and Ajayi mentioned earlier, we need to think about the metrics, we need to think about the analytics, we need to think about our processes. So Martin pointed out that there's a difference between the design phase of training and the develop phase of training. Ajayi talked about the analytics we need to take into account even as we are making and putting together our training. That's what the strategic conversion is about. And then companies need to consider creating a culture of learning. So learning is not something we do as a one-off. Learning should be part of the organizational culture, that we are always learning. We are always discovering new ways of doing things. We're always discovering how we can become better and how we can support one another in each and everything that we do, and how we can also be future ready. Because learning today takes a while to embed, and by embedding it into your daily habits, then we see transformation, and then we actually see results that affect the business. And then let's empower L&D teams through upskilling. So again, Ajayi, I'll refer back to his presentation. He talked about some of the challenges that we have, that the L&D teams need to also have the skills to be able to understand what's going on in the business, for example. Business acumen becomes a key and a critical skill. Secondly, it becomes very important to be agile because things are changing very, very fast. So on a different forum with HR professionals, a number of them mentioned that since this pandemic hit for them in the last 1.5 months, they have had to make decisions they never considered part of their jobs anymore. So it stopped being about my normal daily job and it became about how can I add value to the business? Where can I add value to the business? Where can my skills be best used in the business beyond just my day-to-day job? And that involves helping our L&D teams have the skills in their hands to deliver and to do their jobs well. And then the last piece for companies, they need to consider exploring alternative learning strategies. So we're talking about using mobile, for example, as a consideration for delivering training. All training need not be in person. Of course, we cannot do away with in-person training because it has its place. But even as we are going online or as we are going virtual, let's think about how, for instance, we can have bite-sized learning on people's phones, how we can have quizzes as a way for people to learn, how we can have 1 or 2 learning objectives that are taught in a very short span of time and which somebody can easily access in a few minutes without necessarily having to sit through a whole class. So that involves exploring alternative learning strategies. But what about the individuals? So if you're an employee in a company, what does this mean for you? Or if you're an individual who's very invested in their own learning, what then can you do? So first, you own your journey. Remember, you're responsible for your own learning and your own experiences. So Udemy, for example, is always having courses about presentation skills. So if you'd like to know how to be a better presenter, why not get onto Udemy and learn how to do presentation skills? More recently, LinkedIn has been offering many free learning paths, for instance, where you can get to learn more about things that interest you. So do you want to be a better speaker? Do you want to know how to be or to practice emotional intelligence? They offer you a course and you're able to be very front and center in your own learning journey. And then make learning a habit. So many times we'll see our teams simply want to take a day off from the office. So yeah, we are going for training and they're excited about it as a one-off. But then if we adopted an always learning mentality, then you can support yourself to learn something at every turn. Remembering that each and everything you learn helps you in one way or another, and eventually will also help your company and your organization. And then lastly, ask for learning opportunities. Learning doesn't just happen in a classroom. Learning happens everywhere, anytime, any day. This means when you're commuting to work, you can learn. When you're on a call with somebody else from another team in another part of the world, or just simply speaking to your friends and family, you can learn something. So ask for learning opportunities. If you see someone doing something which you think is great, ask them if you can be a part of it. If you see somebody who is very engaging and you'd like to speak like them, ask them, can I shadow you? Can you give me some tips? How do you do this? And they are able to help you and support you in your own learning journey. So as I conclude, I'll just say one thing, that we should never stop learning. We cannot as individuals stop learning, and we should not. And as companies and as L&D professionals, HR professionals, learning is a very integral part of the business. In as much as it gets sidelined, we cannot not learn. So let's keep learning.
Hi, Susan. Thank you very much. We have quite a number of questions, I think about 12 questions. And I'd like to thank all the 242 HR professionals who have joined us for this session. Thank you very much. I know they're spread out within the continent. So let's share my screen, then can have the questions. Sorry. Okay, great. There are the questions. AJ and Susan, I think I'll give you the option to pick a question, and then you can answer that. You can pick any of the questions there. AJ? Okay. Or as you pick a question, you can go first. Okay, yes, you've been quiet for a while.
Okay. Yeah, I love this question. Why should we have L&D? And it's a very fantastic question that I want to answer with another question. Why should we have blood in our body? Simple. Because the truth is, if you don't have blood in your body, you can't function. L&D is the blood of an organization. Because if you don't have new skill, new capabilities, competencies to drive your work, you cannot be productive, you cannot add value to the organization, and it will be very difficult for you to even grow in your career. I don't know how you will grow without learning. Okay. Then what's the difference between a trainer and a facilitator? Oh, okay, given that in the presentation, the focus is on facilitators, fantastic. You see, a facilitator guides you in a conversation. I'm also a trainer and a facilitator. I mentioned earlier, I'm the chairman of International Association of Facilitators in Nigeria. A facilitator helps you to build that learning from your conversation, whether group conversation or engages you to produce that knowledge. It guides you to produce that knowledge. And if you're talking of a trainer assumes you have no knowledge about this and is taking you from zero to where you should be. So it's not giving you the opportunity to produce that knowledge because you don't know it. So that's just the difference. The facilitator, you have little knowledge, but the facilitator helps you to up it. But for the trainer, you're not there. So the trainer has to guide you through. Okay. What is the basic outline format of L&D policy? For example, you need to have policy on local training. You need to have policy around training budget. You need to have policy around types of training. I mean types of learning, sorry. Let me put it that way. You need to have policy on that. You need to have policy around impact of learning, selection of vendors, curriculum design, content design, deployment. So all these are contents that you find in L&D policy. I do not think we have an email. If we have an email, I can send a copy of L&D policy to Martin to share with the participants.
I think you can send it to me, then we are creating a pool of resources for each session we're having, so that policy can be part of the pool of resources that the participants can use at the workplace.
I'll share that with you. Okay, I'm just picking some. I'm not particular. If I see Susan's name, I don't answer them.
You can become Susan Ajayi if you like.
Okay.
But maybe just, before Susan comes in, just on that question of facilitator and trainer, and also tying it with the learning and development policy, what I've found is, or rather what I've learned within the last 1 year, there are areas of learning and development that possibly in this market is overlooked. Ajayi, I noticed in Nigeria, you have lots of instructional designers. Yeah? Yes. So again, the trainer, the facilitator delivers what the instructional designers has prepared for the facilitator output. Again, there is need for this, for Kenyan markets to go a step higher, and we have instructional designers. Susan, you'll agree with me on this, or you can disagree. We have few instructional designers. We have lots of trainers and facilitators. Again, facilitator, trainer, they're usually used interchangeably, but we have that gap in learning design. First of all, the needs analysis and the learning design. Development, I think we're doing well there, but we need to look at the design part. Yeah?
That is very true, Martin.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I'm with you on that one.
One of the things that I can say from this end, Martins and Susan, is if there is another forum we can look at this, you know, in terms of content development, design and all that, it will be very fantastic. Like you rightly say, we have lots of people here that do that. And I mean, this will even bring us to sharing knowledge and enmeshing experiences together, so that, I mean, together we'll grow. So if we can have a forum around that, that would be very fantastic.
I think we'll organize around that in instruction design. I think about a week or so, or less, you know. Catherine, Catherine, I'm just seeing. Yes.
Okay. There's a question, how do we deploy virtual learning for shop floor employees? You know, shop floor employees are physically present at their shop floor to do whatever they want to do. But in terms of my experience, virtual learning for them will be at their leisure. Let's say during time they are off from work, like this time that we're having stay at home. It can be a very good way, but on a regular basis, how do you deploy? Because they are busy at the production floor doing what they were paid to do. But in some cases, if you want to deploy a virtual learning for them, you can cut short the number of hours of work for them in a particular day and ask them to allocate that to learning. I have seen it happen with a client and it's been very effective. So thank you, Martins.
Okay. Susan, you have one or two questions you can.
Yes, so I can pick up, how does this translate for the public sector? And I believe this question comes because the public sector operates very differently from the private sector. And one of the things I believe the public sector needs is some advocacy and some championing for learning as being important and being very critical to change the way we do things. I have seen some changes happen over time. So I know that in some ways the public sector is still behind on the curve of learning. But then one, it means that these conversations must continuously be had. It might feel like no change is happening, but then change happens slowly. So we never thought we'd ever see things like performance contracts happening in the public sector, but performance contracts were introduced. So translating is one, championing and advocacy, and then two, showing the benefits that training would have and the changes that training would bring within the public sector. Just small things, minor changes, let's start small and keep building momentum. Then in terms of the universities, so universities are now being forced to rethink how they deliver. because most of our universities have relied on in-person delivery, but then now the question is, can we partner with another university in another part of the world so that we are able to share knowledge and best practice, and also promote and support each other in delivery of the content. So there is still some work to be done in both of those two sectors. That's the universities and the public sector, but then it must be about continuous conversations. It's not a one and done kind of thing. It is for HR professionals, L&D professionals, people within the university area and the public sector to keep coming together and having these discussions. And I actually like what Martin is doing, that Martin is championing for learning. And I like the distinction that Martin also makes, that he's in L&D and not HR, because often L&D gets sidelined in view of the bigger HR picture, and yet L&D is equally important. Then there's a question about coding and what relationship it has with L&D. Now, I mentioned coding as one of the future skills that we are seeing emerging. What relationship does this have with L&D? It could be one of two things. One, if the program you want to deliver doesn't exist, you can create it. If you then have coding skills, you're able to create your own LMS, or you create your own learning system. At the same time, some of the other skills that we are seeing as being future skills are the softer skills. So things like adaptability, agility, communication, collaboration. Those are some of the softer skills that we are seeing. So coding is a skill you can use for yourself to design a program which may not already exist. And at the same time, depending on the industry where you work. So for example, people in tech, coding is an everyday thing. That's part of what they do. So as an L&D or as a HR practitioner in that field, it helps you to understand better what your team is learning, because then you can support them much better. Then I think there's a question here that's repeated about how we can, so how do we lead an effective online or virtual coaching session that creates excitement, motivation, attention, and learners' engagement? So for those who are here at the beginning of the session, you might have heard AJ say, hi guys, if you can hear me, type in the chat, hello. And you all went in and you typed in the chat. So how can you lead one? Things like those. So how do you get people speaking? You can have polls, you can introduce polls, you can use live screen sharing, you can use videos in between, you can create breakout rooms where people go out and discuss different things. So there are many different ways in which you can do it. You just need to think a little bit more critically about it in terms of how you can take what you'd normally have as a verbal cue in a physical classroom and translate that to engagement in a virtual classroom. So those are just two areas. There are many more that you can think of and that you can also consider. Then I'll take one last one. So organizations are focusing on the upcoming fourth industrial revolution, which shall result in high change of existing jobs. How can organizations get ready for this? Through L&D. So one of the ways is, first of all, understanding the change, because you'll find not everyone may know what's coming. Not everyone may have heard about the future of work, for example. Not everyone might have heard about the fact that in the next 10 years, people will be employed for jobs that don't exist now. So step one, literally educate yourself. Get to know what's going on, what's happening, what are we expecting, what are we seeing? That's the first thing. Then the second thing is understanding what business are you in and how could your business transform and translate in the future. So if you are in manufacturing, what does manufacturing in the future look like? If you're in banking or insurance or in hospitality, what does that future for your company look like? And then from there, begin to design programs that help you move towards that future. I think, Martin, we're done, unless there's another one.
Yes. Maybe there are a few questions that have come in, and maybe I can be able to respond to them as we close. So, why do organizations need learning? Yesterday's session was on strategy, And when your organization does strategy, you will clearly see that the new competencies you need to build in your staff to be able to meet the objectives of the goal, the objectives of the organization, sorry. And that's when we come into learning and development, where we see the competencies that we want to build and decide how we want to design the training. Designing the training, a question that has been asked is knowing where are you placing the quiz, what's this topic going to be, what are the learning objectives. Something else I've come to see in time, we have been doing learning objectives wrongly. We cannot measure. Learning objectives that you cannot measure become just like a KPI that you cannot measure. The learning objectives of a session, of a learning program, are the KPIs of that session, of that learning program. I think there are some more questions that have been asked, much more than we can be able to cover in 1 hour. And as everyone has proposed, we will have organized a session around content design or learning design. And then there was another request for around TOT, which we'll also be covering soon. Glad to see Kate Wekesa, who will be here in tomorrow's session, together with Johnson, I believe, who is also part of this team that is in the group right now. And so we'll be able to cover much more. Also, we'll be sharing the recording of this session with everyone who's coming late or everyone who's missed out part of it. And then also, I'd like to give my email address to everyone. My email is martin@performanceafrica. For any other questions that you may have that might come up, and we can be able to respond to you. Also, we'll be able to share this recording, as I mentioned earlier, and we'll be there to take on any questions. As we look towards closing the session, I'd like just to take a poll. Everybody who is in learning and development, if they can just type a yes, if you do training or designing, design training, just with a yes. Those in HR, kindly type in HR. These are people purely in HR. So you know, we help guys in learning. Great. Again, thank you to everyone, every country who joined us today. I am actually pleased that we had 200. We hit our top marks was 240 participants for this session. I think we all deserve a clap for ourselves. Yeah, we appreciate you. And then tomorrow we continue with L&D. There was a question around how do we manage people who are working remotely? That's a question we answer in the performance management sessions next week, 23rd, 22nd and 23rd. Kindly join us for that session. Unless maybe then other questions, we'd like to close this session for today. Been a brilliant session, and we want to appreciate everyone who's joined us today. Ajayi, any final words? Susan? Okay. I guess.
I think we hear from Susan before I talk. I've always been the one talking. Let her talk first.
Oh, ladies first.
I have to respect her for that.
Okay.
Susan?
Susan?
Thank you.
I don't know why she's muted.
No, it's okay. I'm muted now. So, Ajayi, thank you. Ladies first, and maybe gentlemen shortly before. Anyway, on a more serious note, parting shot from me is that let's not have learning as just a tick box activity. Learning is, like I said earlier, happens everywhere, anytime, anyway. As HR, as L&D professionals, let's also be creative and innovative in how we can promote learning in our organizations and for ourselves. And it's always easier to lead by example. So do it for yourself first before you can actually get somebody else to do it, because you will be able to share with them how it worked and what it is you did that made the difference. For those in the informal sector, the micro and SME fields, in such cases, creativity goes a long way. how can you use mobile phones, for example, to train people? Or how can you use mobile phones to promote learning? Those are some of the questions which I think would also be takeaways for us who are not necessarily in mainstream corporate, but then work in the medium and small enterprise. I believe change is happening. And now more than ever, we've accelerated that change, and technology is going to take us even further. So let's be prepared for it. Let's embrace it. Let's get excited about learning. AJ, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Susan, for taking the first floor. Okay, I just want to thank everyone for listening. My final words, one to Martins, one to everybody, then one to anybody. For Martins, thank you very much. For bringing this on. I want to please beg, let me use that word, beg you, that let this continue so that we'll continue to add values to Africa. It's a very, very big thing. I take it seriously. I just want to plead with you that I shouldn't stop here so that we'll continue to build. And to everyone, needs to be future oriented in L&D. L&D is one of the most dynamic areas of HR, if you want to say, and if you're taking it out of HR, it's one of the areas that drives success of an organization. I have worked in the big 4 organizations in the world, and I know you agree with me, they invest a lot in learning and development. So it's very important for you to get committed to that. But to an individual, which I say I'm borrowing the word of Susan, do it first for yourself and you can change the world. What you don't believe in, others can believe in with you. So thank you, everyone. I do hope some other time we'll meet and catch up again. Thank you, Martins. Thank you, Susan. Have a good morning, everyone.
Okay, so as we finish up, AJ, your request is met. We will have sessions at least minimum weekly, right? Everybody who signed up will be informing you of the sessions. Our next round, we want to have South, East, and West. So that is something we're working on in the pipeline. So, and we want to bring things that challenge people, things that bring the continent together. There's learning from West Africa, there's learning from Southern Africa, there's learning from Western Africa. My apologies to all our brothers and sisters in different time zones. We missed you yesterday, and today's reminder clarified the time zones. Our apologies, and hope you'll be able to join us tomorrow's session. As we close, I'd like to say thank you very much to everyone, and see you guys tomorrow for tomorrow's session. Have a lovely day, everyone, and thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks, bye.